what we wanted to do was create interconnected virtual worlds that people owned, right? That they genuinely owned, and they weren't like limited metaverse visions. Like one of the aspects that we saw, the first kind of wave of metaverse was they seemed quite, it was like you buy land and you've got this small little kind of place to look after. And we were kind of like, well, hold on, we've got the whole infinite possibility here. Why don't we give people whole worlds and let them design and create amazing stuff with AI?
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not investment, legal, or financial advice. Opinions are those of the host and guests and do not reflect any affiliated entities. Investing involves risk, and past performance is not indicative of future results. The host and guests may hold positions in discussed securities. Now, please enjoy the show. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited to chat with you. All right, Michael, you are the founder and CEO of Youmio and also the creator of Limbo. So Youmio is a platform to create immersive 3D worlds and 3D AI agents. Limbo is an AI agent that comments on things like crypto, music, tech, and other topics that are, within our world, within our realm. And previously you worked in gaming and media industries, like places like Nintendo, Sega, and more. All right, Michael, tell me, how did you get interested in tech and video games? Were you like a, early gamer or early techie, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, I was like a Super Nintendo kid. So, like Street Fighter, Mario Kart, Mario Brothers. I migrated from Master System, I think it was, to Mega Drive and then to Super Nintendo. So, yeah, kind of early console days. I've always been obsessed with games. Always was also interested in like storytelling. Worked a little bit like as a associate producer in film, in kind of like doing kind of small budget Irish films back in the day. But yeah, then went across and started studying game design. And yeah, got a job at Nintendo, which was cool. Had the opportunity to kind of learn um, learn how to produce projects was really the main thing. Learn how to work with big teams, working on complex ideas. It was in the Wii U era, so kind of a little bit of a lull. But 3DS was pretty strong at that point. Had the opportunity to work on some great games. Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze was one of the highlights for me. Worked on Super Smash Brothers for Wii U. And then I moved across to a Sega studio called Sports Interactive, who are known for making the Football Manager simulation games, which was like a dream job for me. I'm a massive fan of that game, and I knew everything about it before I even went into the job. Like I knew all about how the databases worked and all that kind of stuff. I was in the forums. So that kind of just fit like a glove, and I had the opportunity to develop a ton of different games under the Football Manager franchise. And as a simulation gamer, this was like a big dream for me. It was also way more hands-on than Nintendo. Nintendo was like amazing, but it's like the big wheel keeps turning, right? Whereas at Sports Interactive and at Sega, we could really impact things. The things that we were doing really, really mattered. If we made a mistake, there was going to be hell to pay. It couldn't just be swiped under the rug, So, we were launching MMOs in Korea and China, multiplayer features for the main PC game. So it was just an amazing kind of and brutal training ground, working with really top developers, best developers in Europe. So yeah, that's kind of my journey, and I left that world behind me to set up this company.
That's really cool. So it sounds like, it's funny because what you're doing today is so applicable to what you kind of were, obviously what you're doing before, but also your interest of both kind of storytelling and the actual gameplay. What made you interested in storytelling? Like, were you a big fantasy novel kid, or like, how did you? Because I feel like gameplay is you're living in someone else's story. Storytelling is you're creating that from scratch, which is, I think, like a kind of a different level of difficulty. So in your opinion, like where did that spawn from?
Yeah, I mean, storytelling, I guess it was always a very central part of what, of growing up for me. The Irish folklore roots are there, word of mouth stories and stuff like that, and a family of journalists and stuff like that. So it was always a very prevalent part of where I came from. A lot of my friends we just all ended up being mad for movies, maybe that's what drew us together. Actually, my best friend, who I now is my co-founder, You know, when I went off to study games, he went off to study film. He went to London Film School, studied a master's in screenwriting, and left a kind of like his kind of legal kind of career behind to go into film. Made his first short movie, which won an Academy Award for Best Live Action Short. And then went on after that and made a feature film called Swan Song, kind of like a near sci-fi film, which is on Apple Plus at the moment. It was nominated for Golden Globe 2 years ago. So yeah, like we've kind of, you know, he's always helped me during that period with games. He's got great intuition, and I helped him with film. And then when the time came, we were kind of like, all right, you know, there's all this amazing technological opportunity. The idea of what storytelling is changing. You know, Hollywood is changing. I mean, it's kind of on its knees in one way. So it just felt like a really interesting point for myself and Ben, you know, to go in and build something unique together. And that's what we've been trying to do.
So yeah, what was that? What was that initial ideation? Because you know, you have your skill set, Ben has his skill set. Were you guys noodling for a long time? Like, hey, we should do our own thing, or you're like, hey, like now's the time. Like the technological inflections, whether it be crypto or AI or you know any of these other things are happening right now. We need to make this move, or like how'd that start?
Well, we were riffing on games when we were like 17 and 18. We were writing like one pagers for games back then about stuff that we could do together. Like we at the time, neither of us like had a clue about engineering. You know, Ben was a really good sound designer. I had kind of some musical chops and stuff like that. And we thought that, you know, what we could do is we actually I haven't even thought about this in a long time. One of the games we came up with was like a game whereby you were constantly looking up at the sky and you were using sound to try to guide you towards different things. So, like spatial sounds, basically. So, we were always thinking about ways that we could like try to turn the limitations into positives, and also use our own means to try to be able to develop something interesting and creative. And yeah, I think like, you know, when this kind of came around, we sat down and we kind of knew we wanted to explore the confluence of some very experimental technologies. And that's always just been an exciting aspect of what we do. Like I love thinking about what technology is going to do, especially to virtual worlds. It's what I think about a lot. Um, and we, you know, literally our first one page on this, like, you know, a good few years ago now, was really like, what does it look like at the confluence of AI, crypto, and video games? What does that look like? You know, and we've been trying to answer that question for the last couple of years. At least we've been exploring the question in more detail. And it just so happens that it's become a lot more popular for people to explore that question as well over the last period, which is great, you know, because yeah, it's a totally game changing aspect for society. And I mean, of course, for virtual worlds and for video games and for movies and stuff like that. But for culture broadly, I think that we're looking at a massive shift as well.
So yeah, you know, we were talking about this offline, but when we first met you a few years back, you were talking about these virtual worlds and AI agents. I think we were talked about them as AI NPCs because the term AI agent was not like a thing. And
That's right.
yeah, we're having conversations around how it's going to change media and entertainment and how, you know, gameplay itself is going to be not, I forgot the terminology. Of course, this is years back, so I'm not remembering everything, but it was like customizable to the user and they're going to have their own unique experiences. And it's not going to, some of it will look and feel like a game, but then some of it will look and feel like a movie, and it's going to kind of blend together and be a totally new experience. So tell me, like, how did you and Ben formulate the early ideas of like, okay, we're going to create, you know, Today the Game, which is now Youmio, you guys changed the name, but tell me about that. Like, what was that initial ideation of like, okay, this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, so we kind of predicted that AI was going to have a groundbreaking change to society and to how we make games. And we kind of put it as like a 5-year kind of thing. And that's kind of the way that we were thinking about it at the time. You know, we were like, how can we scale this level of storytelling? You know, we spoke to some of the best game designers in the world, and we're kind of like, well, to do what we do, the technology's not there, right? Like, you can't write that much script, you know? But AI was the only way it could happen. And we kind of expected that it was going to take like that for 5 years. It took about a year. It took about a year. So everything just went way faster than we thought. And we ended up with all of the tools that we wanted. Not all of the tools, but like most of the tools that we really needed. We ended up with them quicker. And that's actually just been like an exponential curve, that all of the stuff that we as creators need just keeps being given to us, or we keep building it faster and faster. So, when we sat down, I think, honestly, Andrew, the first one pager on this experience is pretty similar to what we're building. We've gone through like the washing machine of ideas and pivots and different things, but actually when you really zoom out and you look at what this is, it's actually quite similar. What we wanted to do was create interconnected virtual worlds that people owned, right? That they genuinely owned, and they weren't like limited metaverse visions. Like one of the aspects that we saw at the first kind of wave of metaverse was they seemed quite, it was like you buy land and you've got this small little kind of place to look after. And we were kind of like, well, hold on, we've got the whole infinite possibility here. Why don't we give people whole worlds and let them design and create amazing stuff with AI? And then we were like, the big thing is then, okay, what keeps them in those worlds? Because the first wave of those virtual worlds experience or metaverse experiences, people, there wasn't a lot to do. You just kind of hung out, like, that's all right. But it doesn't really keep players, or historically that hasn't kept people inside of virtual worlds. The virtual worlds that have been successful have had really good play patterns, really good business models, whether it's League of Legends or Roblox or, um, World of Warcraft. Yeah, we were like, well, what's the secret sauce for us here, And for us, it was like, how can we like bring characters into it? How can we bring characters into it? How can we bring Ben's knowledge of character development? And at that time, with the emergence of LLMs, it was clear that like NPCs were about to undergo a total revolution. And the idea of your ABCD kind of like, do you want to pick the shovel or do you want to pick the treasure chest? That was all about to change. And we're going to be able to move to a more conversational relationship with NPCs. So yeah, they've always been the core focuses for us. How do we give people the ability to own really interesting, fun worlds that are populated by really interesting and fun and powerful NPCs?
All right. So can you talk about the evolution from Today the Game, and then you guys have changed the name to Youmio? Well, first of all, why'd you change the name?
Today is a bit of a nightmare of a name. It's like, not the most searchable thing. And the amount of people I've confused in like if I do a podcast or something, people are like, today I've got Mike from, well, today I've got, it just turns into this whole, like everyone's tripping over each other and stuff like that. And then, so there was one side of that, it was just kind of a bit technical. The other was that it actually felt on a vision perspective, things had changed, right? So we called the game Today, but we had to take a handle, and Today wasn't available for obvious reasons. So we were like Today, and we called it The Game, Today the Game. We took it as a handle, not to name the game that. But everyone was like, oh, I can't name anything. Like you can't, it's hard to put the word today into a sentence almost without confusing people. So everyone called us our handle, which was Today the Game. And that eventually started feeling quite off to us because we weren't just a game. We were developing out lots of infrastructural technology. We were developing out other things which were more experiential outside of the core play mechanics that we've been built, that have been built as well. So we felt that Youmio was more encapsulating of everything that we were moving towards.
And so why, it's also crazy to think about our early conversations to now, because I remember sitting down and I was like, dude, like Michael's talking about this stuff that, sure, maybe in the future, probably in the future, they're going to have these AI agents that are very intelligent. They can do all these things. Sorry, AI NPCs, I think is what we referred to them back then. And, but I'm like, man, that could take 10 years. Like, who knows, And, but your vision was kind of, hey, these things are going to be these new forms of entertainment. And I was thinking about it like, oh, I'm talking to Michael, the game developer, but it was so much more than that. So can you tell me why, like what do AI agents, AI NPCs, et cetera, whatever you want to call them, what do they represent in terms of gameplay and in terms of entertainment? Because they are this like totally new thing. It's not like linear gameplay. It's kind of like experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, agents are going to have a very impactful role in the kind of next era of society broadly, um, I think it's become increasingly clear that we're going to outsource a lot of things we want to do to agents. One reason, as a slight digression, why I think it's really important that we use on-chain agents as much as possible for outsourcing this really important stuff to this code. And we better make damn sure that it's doing the things that we want, especially when there's like really, really important identity or financial things attached to it. But moreover, yeah, I guess like, listen, over time, we're going to see exactly what it all means. Like, I don't have all the answers to this one. It's like everyone is going to have the combined intelligence of humanity essentially at their fingertips, and the democratization of creativity either has happened or is happening at like an extremely high rate. So it's going to enable people to do more, which I think is really cool. And that also kind of like, how does it represent itself inside of video games in the entertainment world? Well, I think that we're going to see massive shifts, massive shifts. So for entertainment, I think that we're going to see a bigger kind of shift than what we saw with the emergence of YouTube and streaming culture, whereby it kind of like, in some ways you can say it kind of destroyed the traditional TV network world, created just a whole new way for people to consume content. And I think that we're going to see that again. I think that agents are going to have a big role in that, not just as things that we work with, but actually on an entertainment basis as well. I think we're going to see a lot of actors and streamers and commentators and stuff like that. And people are going to have pretty like strong emotional connections to those agents as well. Inside of video games, I think like some of it seems kind of like a bit clearer. It's kind of what we've been dreaming for in simulation games for years, like really detailed NPCs that you can speak to, develop relationships with, that have got long-term memory and stuff like that. And crucially are interoperable. So you could go and travel around these different worlds with these different agents. So it's a little bit, from that perspective, it's a little bit like a lot of what, the hot air that was which was promoted in the first wave of metaverse experiences. It's kind of no longer hot air. Now we've actually got the ability to build these interoperable tools and take them around these different amazing virtual worlds. So that is awesome. I mean, as a gamer and as a game developer, it's just so cool to be able to do that and to be able to think about what it looks like when people are able to inhabit these worlds with these richly detailed characters who are really powerful. The characters themselves are really powerful. So, some sense you're cohabiting these worlds rather than just being like the simple god of those worlds, as what we'd seen previously. And the last thing I'll say for video games, I think, which is we're only kind of scratching the surface with now, but I think it's going to totally change the face of video games, like totally change in a way that it will never come back to being normal. Games are going to be like Mid-Journeys is now, in the sense you're going to be able to go in and use prompts to create pretty detailed games. And, so it touches again on the democratization of creativity. People are going to be able to create amazing games. It's going to be the ideas, the era of the ideas person. So like in Roblox, for example, perhaps the most successful game around at the moment, you've got a pretty basic game engine where you're able to make some stuff and stuff like that. And all the kids love hanging out in there, and that's cool, right? What's about to happen is people are going to be able to make all manner of things, which are going to be way more detailed and kind of way better than anything that people could ever make inside of Roblox. And it's going to be available to everyone cross-platform. So an incredible opportunity for people to be able to express themselves in totally different ways.
All right. So I want to dig deeper into that, but before, I want to get just the basic definition of Youmio. If you're at a cocktail party with regular people that are not in crypto, not in video games, how do you describe, like, you're like, hey, I'm Michael, I'm founder of Youmio, we are blank. Like, what is that thing?
Yeah, so Youmio is basically this cross-platform experience that empowers anyone to create and deploy powerful and valuable 3D agents that exist on-chain and are capable of entering 3D worlds. So that 3D worlds aspect is I would say, one of the USPs for us, I suppose. There's a lot of kind of agentic frameworks or agentic launch pads out there. Some of the more popular ones, like Virtuals over the last period, has been really, really popular and have done a lot to propel the narrative forward, and they've been launching interesting agents using their framework. People have largely built social media agents, 2D social media agents, using other types of frameworks. They've built other types of social media agents, like probably most interestingly AI XBT, which is this massive influencer on Twitter at the moment, and a huge commentator on all sorts of different things, and all done with this kind of like degen spice. Um, and that's been really cool to see, right? But it only goes so far. There's a kind of a limitation to where a lot of that can go, unless the frameworks get more complex or unless the agents are able to do more interesting things. Um, they will be, and there will be, like, there's going to be way more interesting 2D awesome things. They're going to be able to buy and sell things on chain. They're going to be able to like book your holidays, all that kind of stuff. They're calling sick for you, if it's your boss, all those kind of things. They're all coming, right? And our focus is on what happens when we give all those agentic capabilities, a character, like a brain, a character brain, alongside of an avatar, right? So when we personify them as well as still having all of these interesting capabilities, what happens when we put those three things together? So the agentic capabilities, the brain, the avatar, put them all together and then put them into these different 3D worlds. That's what we focus on. And what that does is it creates awesome opportunities, in particular for video games, but also for entertainment broadly.
All right. So there's a ton of dive in there. I want to go with the kind of the categories or subcategories of agents, because you have on one hand AI agents as entertainment, then AI agents as like utility, like as you were mentioning, call in sick for you, order your groceries, design your vacation and book it, right? But on the other hand, I think that where I am most excited, I have my consumer kind of bias here, but are agents that relate to people and that are conversational and eventually become like your friends, your coach, your partner, your supporter, et cetera. I think, your therapist, whatnot. I'm really, really, really excited about where agents are headed in that realm, and specifically pertaining to games and whatnot. Like, I will play a video game. If my friend's playing a video game or friends, I will play that game 100 times or more than if it's just myself playing. So I think that there's a big role there in terms of engagement and monetization and retention for games. How are you thinking in terms of that split between, like, all right, the agents that we are creating are primarily, because you also mentioned 3D worlds. So I'm like, okay, that to me is more on the gaming side, but then you're also talking about some utility, like you're giving examples of utility, like booking your vacation or whatever. Where do you want to focus your time in terms of your efforts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So man, I totally, I'm on the same page as you in the sense that I'm really interested by the capacity for people to have emotional connections with NPCs, right? That was always a really interesting aspect for me. People connect to characters through fiction in loads of different ways, right? Like whether it's through books, you can kind of get into the psyche of the person who's writing it or the character that's been written. Film offers this kind of multimedia poetic way of you understanding and feeling characters, whether it's like using montage or a close up at the right time can tell you a lot about what someone's feeling, and there's an expressionism to it. And interactive characters offer a different tool set for you to be able to connect to characters. And I think a really interesting and powerful tool set, because you're engaging with them. In the case of like the modern kind of NPCs or agents that we're building, you're speaking directly to them and they know who you are, and you've got like backstory with them. You've got shared memories and history. They've got emotion and they understand you. They understand aspects of why you're in a bad mood potentially that day or why you're really happy, and they want to talk about it with you. So that's really, really interesting. I think I think it opens up a lot of opportunities to do really awesome stuff. From a creative perspective, it creates a huge amount of opportunity for someone like Ben, my co-founder, who's like a filmmaker and a creative technologist and kind of has been working around these different aspects for years. It's a dream come true to be able to access this type of technology. Like Ben's he's a genius and he comes at things in a very unique way, and being able to lower the barrier of technical entry to him, so he's able to express himself through these different technologies to build these different characters. It's amazing. It's so cool. From the other side, I mean, it's worth also mentioning the commercial opportunity here as well that exists at this early stage. Um, and that's pretty immense, right? So when you look at virtual worlds and when you look at games broadly, and we break down what people love to, people love to spend on inside of video games, probably the biggest vertical or biggest category of spend exists within cosmetic in-app purchases. All right. So 55% of all in-app purchases are cosmetic, i.e., they don't impact the gameplay. They impact how you look. They impact the skins. Maybe it's furniture for the house, for the digital house, and so on, so on. And that's a trend that I don't see slowing down, right? I think it's pretty commonly known now that, like, Gen A or even Gen Z see a greater sense of importance of their digital identity than, for example, Gen X or millennials, right? People see their digital identity as increasingly important, and that's why they spend on it. They want to look cool inside of their virtual worlds. Yeah, that's a trend that we've seen increase, and it's going to increase more and more. We hypothesize that there is an incredible commercial opportunity tied to this that people aren't really looking at as much as they should be, which is that if you're really connected to the AI NPCs inside of your world, they're your mates, right? They're your mates. Like, you want them to have a nice house too, right? You want them to look cool. And when, like, Andrew, when you come to my world and you check it out, I want my world to look cool, and I want the people in my world to look cool too. I want them to be a representation of the kind of things that I love. So you're no longer just buying for yourself anymore. You're going to be buying for your agents as well. And we think that this is going to create a massive multiplier on commercial opportunities from cosmetic in-app purchases.
Man, okay, there's so many cool things to dig into there. Okay, so yeah, I've been tweeting for a few years, not a few years, but maybe a year or so, that the most impactful technology over the next 3 years, I keep saying 3 years, no matter how many years it's been, I keep saying 3 years, but will be AI agents, in the sense of, and this is like, I'm like a crypto guy, right? I'm super bullish on Bitcoin, super bullish on stables and crypto, et cetera. And I'm like, no, agents specifically within AI, which is also very exciting, is going to be the most impactful because number one, these things are going to be useful. So, like, they'll help us with, I go the utility route first, where it's, okay, it helps me order groceries and schedule my day, whatever. So I'm going to download it, even if I'm some 40-year-old guy who works in like a regular job. And then number two, I'm going to like them because, Bob, my agent, is going to have a cool personality, and it's going to be kind of designed to fit what I like, what Andrew likes. So it's going to say, oh, Andrew likes these kind of jokes, I'm going to say more of those jokes. He's in a bad mood, I'm going to make him feel happy with blah, blah, blah. So number one, they're useful. Number two, I like him or them. And number three, I listen to them. So the number three, listen to them, is crazy, because Bob's going to say, hey, Andrew, why don't you order, you haven't had pizza in a few weeks. Why don't you get Domino's? And I'm going to say, oh, great idea, Bob. Thanks. Or order me Domino's. Right.
Yeah.
And that right there's a huge commercial opportunity for them to, Domino's to pay a fee every time that, this agent orders or whatever. So I'm really, really excited about that aspect. And I think that is totally not scary. That's like, okay, cool. If I want pizza, I get pizza, no problem. It gets a little, dystopian. Of course, I have to think about this when it's like, hey, Andrew, you should vote for this candidate because I think that you lean more there. And I'm like, whoa, Bob. So I'm really excited about kind of the potential for agents there. And I don't think that having an agent that acts nefariously is like suicide for the company. So I don't see the financial incentive for the agent to do that. Because then the company would just kind of like, that would kind of make it go out of business eventually. So, but it's possible.
Well, I think you're touching on something really interesting, and it kind of brings me a little bit back to the point that we mentioned briefly earlier on. There is the capacity for these agents to be incredibly influential about your life. Like, it's going to dictate your personality in some sense, right? It's like it's going to program you. Like, to be frank, right? That's what's going to be happening. Like, we already know that the algorithms are already programming us, right? We already know that that's happening. Okay, but agents are going to program us more, and there's going to be a certain kind of arm's length about how that's going to play itself out. And that's why I think it's so important that we build transparent structures for this. People have spoken a lot over the last few years in about like, AI was clearly kind of boom. Crypto has kind of desperately been looking for this kind of intersection point. Everyone's been like, okay, what is it? What's the intersection between AI and crypto? What is it? There's so many different ideas. Or like, is it deep in? Is it like what's the big AI crypto sell here? And I actually think this is it. This is it. We desperately need transparency and trust if we are going to be able to build this the right way. As society, we need to be able to verify that what's going on is above board. Like, if we don't do that, we're walking into another Web 2 problem where, like, when they created social media, they didn't go out there saying, hey, listen, let's like build systems to disrupt this democracy and subvert free speech, or, oh, that's not what they were doing. They were like trying to connect babes on college campuses or whatever, right? But if you don't build your systems right early, they scale, and they scale to ways that you might not want them to scale. And this is why I think it's so important that we look to blockchain for this solution. I really believe it's so important from an ethical perspective that more agents are built on chain, and and we're able to verify the things that are happening in a fair and logical way. I think the alternative is a repeat of, like, we're going to be outsourcing our brains and our personalities to these centralized institutions.
Man, okay. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. We had Facebook, which was like the original, where you friend people that you want to be friends with and you're seeing their content specifically. Then I guess version 2 might be, I don't know, Twitter/X, where I'm designing my own algorithm by following the people I want to see. But then also there's some other stuff that's thrown in there that maybe I'll like, right? Then you go all the way. That's like level 2. Level 3 is like TikTok, where it's like, no, we're just going to show you what you want to see. And, early on when I first had TikTok, it was like, pro China and then anti US, like broadly speaking. I mean, and that shifted. This is like early on, but everything in China. And I've never been to mainland. I want to go visit so badly, but it's like beautiful. It's like amazing. It's the future, etc. And when you go to anything US, it's like people in Philadelphia like doing drugs on the street or something. It's like, oh, America's like in shambles. So which like that algo is fully teaching me. Then you have what you're talking about, which is level 4, which is your friends, right? Like, I am most influenced by the 5 people closest to me. And my friends are talking about Domino's Pizza, very simple example. I'm really like, man, we should get Domino's. That's a great idea, right? Or they're like, you should vote for this candidate. I'm like, we should vote for that candidate, right? So I think you're right about that. The transparency and really understanding why these things are going to suggest what they're suggesting is going to be utmost important, because they will have massive, massive, massive influence over us. So no, I think that's accurate. But is on-chain really the solution? Because, internally as a firm, we're always arguing. We love to debate different topics. And I'm like, man, I don't see why an agent, I'm thinking from a financial perspective. I'm like, an agent can just open up a bank account. Like, if it's that smart, it's gonna be open up a bank account. Sure, crypto is like way easier, and like, they'll have that too. But you're talking about from a kind of transparency of like, what's this being fed, which that's not something that we've discussed too deeply. So what are your thoughts around kind of the what's being fed into the agent to make it more trustworthy or not?
Yeah, I think it's become increasingly clear that we need to get good data into agents in order for the agents to be useful. One of the problems, and I think one of the fatigue that we've seen over the last period with agents, is that they're all fed with the same data source. So they all said the same kind of stuff, and that's not great for commentary. Frameworks are pretty similar sometimes. I also believe, by the way, frameworks are going to have a kind of a consolidation. And I know frameworks are a really hot topic right now, but I think that we're going to see mass consolidation of frameworks. Yeah, it's going to be obviously massively important that the data is coming through is right, and then the decision making that happens is verifiable. You also mentioned something interesting about this stuff. Oh yeah, of how they can interact. I mean, right now they can't open up a bank accounts and stuff like that for themselves. It's hard to see how that will happen, Like, it's actually a USP, I would say, of crypto for this. Like, for example, right inside of our game, the technically we can have characters that go and have their own wallets and trade, and they're able to trade between each other. They're trading NFTs, for example, as resources inside the game. It's like, I got like 50 wood and I'm going to sell it for 30 avocados and I'm going to whatever, you know what I mean? And that can all happen on chain. It will be, it's probably unavoidable that they're able to interact with bank accounts. Not probably, it's 100% unavoidable. Will they have their own bank accounts? It's kind of a different question in some sense. They're going to be interacting with bank accounts on our behalf. No doubt about it. But they can't really do that now. They can't really do that now. So I think in the short term, I think there's still some pretty interesting USBs from that kind of on-chain trade perspective. And I know there's a few companies who are looking at that as well, who are doing some interesting kind of like ChatGPT-esque kind of UX friendly. Hey, sell me sell all my meme coins and let's get back into stables or whatever. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting period.
So you also talked about almost like agents as status symbols, which I think is really interesting. It's like, in the old version, you have a fancy watch or a nice car, and then not the old version. I mean, that's a current version as well, but that's kind of the V1, if you will, like physical goods. V2 is like, okay, I have a large following on X and I have my NFT PFP, which it's a pet rock or a picture of a rock and it costs 200K or whatever. Big flex there. But you're talking about the next level, which is your AI agent, something that is, travels with you in games, outside of games, etc. You want that person to be kind of decked out and look good and, be a good representative of yourself, but also the environment that they're living in to look good and, kind of represent you well. Talk more about that.
I think it's become increasingly clear that there's going to be a very low barrier to entry to make amazing, beautiful stuff. The era of the blockbuster video game kind of like it's changing. I don't know if it's dying, but it's changing. Like I think Grand Theft Auto, the new one, is budgeted at about $2 billion, which is pretty record breaking. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. I think that it's kind of over. I'm going to just throw a random guess out and say if it's 2 billion, that 500 million is spent on, I'm going to guess that 500 million is spent on 3D art assets. And if that's the case, I just don't know if that's ever going to happen again. I think that we're probably, I don't know, let's say like 12 to 18 months. It's so hard to predict these things, but I'd say that very soon we're going to get like really high level assets. And that's going to totally change video games. So what does that mean for people who are building worlds? I mean, everyone can build pretty worlds, and like, it's a bit concerning for most game developers. You're like, oh shit, like, or engineers. You're like, oh, all that stuff that I've been learning how to do my whole life. It's like, oh, right, everyone can do it now. So it's a little bit concerning on that level. And it's hard to one of the challenges in all of this is within an emergent kind of world of just ubiquitous creative tools that anyone can access for cheap. Defensibility is a question, but for me, I think it's just going to be awesome. I just think it's going to be absolutely amazing that people are going to be able to go into worlds like Youmio and they're going to be able to build the worlds of their dreams, they're going to use 3D generative technology. They're going to build, like, one person's going to build that crazy cyberpunk level. The other person's going to build their kind of chill hippie community, another one's going to build like a representation of, Greenwich Village in 1966 or whatever it is, and people are going to be able to create these worlds and populate them with all these characters. So I just, that's something as a gamer, we've been like, I think anyone who's interested in virtual worlds, I know you're massive on this as well. That's just an exciting concept that we've all been dreaming for, just to give the keys to the kingdom over to players. And honestly, for them to be able to own those worlds. So if those worlds start like garnering significant attention, that players, the main stakeholders, are the ones who are able to capitalize on that, so decentralizing our kind of structures in order to be able to reward those people who will build awesome worlds with awesome characters. I think this is just a really cool incentive structure for people to make amazing stuff. Um, and of course, there's loads of different business models that we can attach to that, transactions, and there's like, of course, there's subscription plans, there's upselling on cosmetics. There's loads of different ways that people can make money on this. But yeah, I just think conceptually, it's going to be a creatively fascinating time for the next generation of players. I'm not this generation. Honestly, I can't wait to get in there once we're kind of at our V1 phase and just be able to like build all the cool stuff that I want to build as well. Right now we've got like Ben, my co-founder, has been coding all of these little mini games over the course. It was like he takes like an hour off in the evening and codes like a mini game. And yeah, we're opening up things in pretty like the way I kind of think about it sometimes is there's this gap between creating something and the thing that you're trying to create in your brain, right? You've got this idea, and how do I get this idea into like a like a song? How do I create a song? It's like, well, fuck, I got to play guitar. I can't play guitar. I got to play piano. I can't play piano. I got to play drums. I can't do that. Well, what if you could? What if like the thing that you had in your shower that day, what if you could just communicate that in an instance? And we didn't have to have 15 years of jazz school to do the guitar, to do the sax solo. What if you could just describe the thing that's in your brain? And well, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We're moving there with music. We're moving there with video games. We're already there in some sense with 2D imagery, you know? Um, so yeah, what an incredible, it's a total shake up to what it means to be creative, to build, and now engineering is done. So like right now, O3, I think, is currently tracking at 35 as the 35th best coder in the world, I think. And by the end of the year, sorry, no, actually, excuse me, it's about 300 at the moment, but apparently internal models in a number of these different LLM creators they're in the top 50. By the end of the year, we're probably going to have the best coder in the world available to us at our fingertips. By the end of this year, so like that's a pretty significant update, So it's going to be more about how people are going to be able to interpret what society wants and interpret what people want, and then the technical ability isn't going to be too high. That's what you don't need the massive technical ability to pull it off. It's going to be about you understanding what your mates want, you understanding what society wants, you able to understand gaps in the market, and telling your story,
Well, okay. So it's like Roblox has been democratized. And so in a world where anyone can spin up a game easily, what is where is the value accrue, and what do the people want to do? Do they want to keep creating different games, or do they want to copy people's games, or do they want to play an entirely different game? That's kind of why I was going to that new status symbol thing, because it's like, okay, well, if I could just copy paste a Roblox, then I don't know, it doesn't lose its appeal, but it's like, it's not as special, right? Or if I see someone with a really fun game and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to make that myself, and I just copy that, it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm kind of thinking about like Henry Ford created the Model T, everyone had cars, and pretty quickly people are like, rich people or people that had different style or different taste, or, just want something different. They're like, oh, I'm going to take this chassis and I'm going to make a totally new car. It's even better. It's faster and cooler and, more shiny and more expensive or whatever. So it's like humans always want to and need to differentiate themselves. So is that kind of where you're seeing like the differentiation and the value will come from? Because you're creating this infra for anyone to do this. But so you're like, okay, the value will come from the storytelling and will come from the status and like the interactivity. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of it. I like sometimes we think about YouTube actually in relation to this, right? Like YouTube, anyone can these days get like one of those little circular lights and a microphone. It's you can get that kind of stuff, and you can make yourself look decent on camera, right? It's free to upload your stuff onto YouTube. There's all sorts of different opportunities to promote yourselves in different ways. But so the technical barriers actually it's pretty flat, right? It's like, it's kind of like anyone has a chance to pull it off. So why are some so good at it? You know, and I think the same question or the same answer will apply to the next generation of like creative digital worlds as well. Why do people love these specific ones when there's not really a huge technical moat? Why do people gravitate towards specific things? Um, Character, charisma, identifying the gaps in the market, speaking about the things that people want to speak about. I know that sounds like it's overly simplistic, but like understanding what people actually want to talk about and talking about those things, um, I think is critical.
So where's Youmio in terms of like the, you know, but we're not 100% fully launched, you know, everything's ready to go, boom. Where are we in that build? Are we early alpha? Are we beta? Are we 50%? Like, give me a breakdown of where we are today.
Yeah, we're definitely more than 50%. We've been building for about 2.5 years now. We're looking to build. To launch the launch pad. So the browser based experience, whereby you're going to be able to go in, design the brains, design the avatars, give the agentic capabilities, um, in pretty cool ways, I would say, in a kind of a UI and a UX that I think is the best out there. And that's a matter of months away. So we're getting way close from that. Um, we could actually, we could probably release it in weeks, but there's a degree of polish, the degree of polish that myself and Ben are aiming for, that we don't want to rush it. We want it to be super cool. Um, so yeah, most of the backbone is there. You know, most of the backbone's there for that. And honestly, we're kind of for the Youmio world stuff. Like we met, I guess, what 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, maybe, and I showed you a demo of one of the worlds. So like, and that was like we had like 2.5 hours of gameplay then and stuff like that. So it's a lot more developed than that now. You know, a lot more developed. So you know, we could probably put out a version of Youmio Worlds. Look, I don't want to commit to a timeline on this, but yeah, we're getting a lot closer, you know, and critically, when people develop agents inside of our ecosystem, they'll be ready for 3D worlds. So it's not just about um, Youmio worlds. They'll be able to, if you create a version of like, you know, Agent Andrew, you're going to be able to deploy it into other 3D worlds as well. So you won't have to wait around for us.
So yeah, you guys have Youmio worlds, Youmio agents. Why is it important that the agents have the ability to go inside 3D worlds? Because the agents that we know of today within crypto world, basically, you know, this is not pretty much, there's some exceptions, but you know, they exist within like the internet, quote unquote. It's like they go on Twitch, they are on X, you know, they're et cetera. But they're not necessarily running around doing things within worlds yet. Why add that, or why need that?
So I think this is a really important point for us. So it's one of the reasons how we delineate ourselves as well. There's a couple of different things that kind of stand out for us. Once the agents are deployed into 3D worlds, there's just a different set of possibilities. So when you think about kind of entertainment, for example, increasingly we've seen Hollywood move towards Unreal Engine to scale productions. So things like The Mandalorian or Star Wars movies, they actually shoot these inside of Unreal Engine. More and more animations are shooting inside of Unreal Engine as well. One of the reasons why is that you've got amazing physics engines. There's the whole technical kind of like toolbox for you to be able to access, to be able to make awesome stuff. And we don't really have the same type of toolbox inside of 2D. Maybe we will in the future. Maybe in like 10 years, we're going to have like a totally different system. 20 years, maybe. It's hard to know where we're going to go with AI at that point. But right now, inside of Unreal Engine, you're able to do just really fucking cool stuff. You can do really cool stuff. And that opens up opportunities. So like you can go in and you can't do this easily in other 2D engines. You can go in and you can like take shots. You can go in and converse with the characters in real time. You can get the characters to meet themselves. there can be real-time interaction. So they start like doing things. They start like picking things up. Maybe they build a house for each other. Maybe maybe they break the other person's house. So there's this opportunity for emergent drama and real-time interactions. And that creates cool opportunities for entertainment, And that's one of the reasons we're building. So Limbo, the Limbo is an example kind of agent, she's like a digital pop star. She autonomously writes her own music, and she exists inside of one of the Youmio worlds, which is called the Limbo verse. The Limbo verse is this place where other agents were able to join her, and there's emergent drama. So like they form alliances and rivalries and stuff like that. And we see it as this kind of testing ground to see what this next generation of experimental storytelling looks like. And we could only do it inside of Unreal Engine. We don't have the tools available through any other technological medium to be able to experiment with those kind of things. And we think that we're quite confident that the results of this development, it's just going to showcase a different style of stuff. It's going to showcase something that we haven't really seen before. These richly detailed NPCs, agents that are able to do stuff both in their worlds and in the real world, interacting with each other. And some of those characters are pretty funny as well, right? Like all of the agents that are out there at the moment that have made the most like market cap value inside of crypto, they're kind of entertainment agents, like social media agents. So they're funny, right? They're like, there's like shit posters and all that kind of stuff. And we want to see what happens when you put them all in the same room. and you give them like, kind of like Big Brother, you give them different tasks and quizzes in order to be able to, I suppose, spark those aspects of emergent drama. So that's just stuff we wouldn't be able to do inside of Unreal Engine. And of course, when it comes to video games, it's like that, like Unreal Engine is in my opinion, I mean, I know there's a lot of Unity fans out there, but in my opinion, Unreal Engine is the most powerful video game engine in the world by a mile. And it enables people to be able to build the next generation of what virtual worlds are and what video games are. I don't think it can be done in any other way. So being able to place 3D agents into these worlds, a game changer.
That's so cool. Okay, so I've had this idea for a while, and I've talked to my wife's an artist. She's an artist in crypto, so I've like noodled on it with her. But so I would love if there was a big piece hanging in my living room, and it was a screen. Obviously, it'd have to be a TV, but it was a quote unquote living piece of art that was a universe, world, country, whatever, that was all inhabited by AI agents. And I could check in on their progress every day. So like, let's say there's red tribe, blue tribe, green tribe. And, they start off with simple tools and they're building civilization, but then over time they evolve. So after a year, maybe turns out that, one faction has persuaded the other faction to join each other. And now they're building more advanced stuff. And then maybe in, 2 years, there's the great filter and the comet comes and, destroys everyone. And anyways, just like a living piece of art, but you're kind of talking about that again, like next level where, it's part entertainment, it's part art, it's part game. It's you can go in there and play God and give them tools and whatnot. It's kind of a next evolution of that. It's really, really interesting.
I absolutely love that. I love that piece of art as well. Our game, Youmio Worlds, is that.
Yeah.
All right. So it's interesting. It is that in a different way. And it could be visualized through that. Right. So we call Youmio Worlds a petri dish simulation. Right. Because like when you think about simulation games, people talk about life simulation, social simulation. You think about games like The Sims, which is like a $5 billion property where you've got these kind of wooden simulated beings that you kind of take care of. You've got Animal Crossing, which is this soft kind of cozy simulation where you're on an island with like pineapples and cute villagers and stuff like that. These are massive. Like Animal Crossing is like the biggest game in Japan of all time, right? And these are huge, huge properties. People love this type of stuff, right? I love this type of stuff as well. But we could never find that title for what we were doing because of the AI aspect. We called it a life simulation. We called it a social simulation. We called it these different words. And then we were kind of like, all right, let's just for the moment work with petri dish simulation because we felt as if it touched on exactly the thing that you were just touching on there. It's this breathing, living organism. And you're not just going in like in The Sims and being like this master-slave relationship where they're like, I need a new hat. And you give them the hat. And then they're like, I am happy. Instead, it's like they're like, I don't really like that hat that you gave me. And actually, do you know what? I'm gonna actually just kind of rip that hat up and I'm gonna turn it into a cloth for my kitchen because that's what I actually really need. You know, they've got this autonomy inside of that world. And for me, that's the next generation of simulation. That's what it is. It's the living, breathing simulation, where you're able to go in there and exactly like you saw what you just said there, but you're able to go in and you can kind of watching it is sometimes as much fun as playing. And although that might sound a bit unintuitive to like the pure gamers who are like, no, you got to play games. It's like a lot of people love to watch games too, right? A lot of people just love to go in and like just watch things happen. And I think that the next generation of simulation games, we're going to see simulated worlds that are just breathing. I think this films have touched on this as well, whether it's Ready Player One and all that other stuff. But yeah, I really believe that we're at the cusp of a really living, breathing simulation. And we over here at Youmio spend a lot of time building that.
So what role do crypto and tokens play? Because, I think specifically around consumer applications, I see crypto and tokens as kind of the best engagement tool of all time. Because obviously money is like extremely engaging. If you look at Mr. Beast, like why is he so successful? Because he takes, some concept. He's like, this person will win $1 million if they, stand in the circle for as long as possible, whatever. So yeah, when it comes to like, this simulation or this game, of course, I'll be more intrigued if there was some sort of monetary aspect of that playing out. How do you view it though?
Yeah, so I think that this is another aspect of you know what the kind of future that we want as society, but also what the kind of future we want as gamers. And there's been resistance to like NFT culture inside of Western games in particular, less so over in the East. Um, but when I kind of zoom out, I try to zoom out a lot when it comes to technology. And I know you do as well, right? You try to kind of not take um, what everyone's saying and just try to like critically review the technology and the kind of what it could do for the things that you're interested in. And when I critically review the role of ownership or the role of blockchain in terms of ownership of assets, I just think it's a really useful feature for as a developer that we could impart onto players. And it doesn't have to mean hyper financialization. Um, but it gives you the opportunity to trade goods and services as a feature if you want, It doesn't have to be that much more complex than that, frankly. I know a lot of people love really complex tokenomics and, you know, things in crypto, but I don't think it has to be super complex when it comes to games. It's like, hey, we were able to make beautiful stuff and beautiful islands and people really value them. At some point, we might decide to monetize on them. I kind of think about it that the same way as like how things work in the real world, like or in the, in real life. It's like if there's a demand for the cool stuff that I'm building, I have the option to sell it. I don't have to. I don't have to engage in all that kind of stuff if I don't want to, but I can. And um, and I think that that's going to be really, really a positive thing for people in the future. It's like I've built these amazing things. Again, a little bit like my YouTube channel kind of like analogy. It's like I've created this thing that people really like. Is there a way that I can monetize them? Because I'd love to do it for my life. So what do? They find commercial opportunities uh, through advertising. They're hoping for a rev share agreement with YouTube. So they can do the things that they love. And which is cool, right? Which is awesome that we built kind of aspects of our digital society for those things to happen. I see it the same way. It's just offering a different set of tools for people to be able to monetize the things that they love. So they'll be able to use use the blockchain in order to be able to create unique things that have scarce value and supply them to people. So like, you come to my islands and, I've got this really specifically cool, interesting game and you decide, you know what, you wouldn't mind putting that on your island. So maybe you want to pay me for it. Of course, the question becomes of like in an era of uh, like replication, where replication is almost instant, why does anything have value in the in the same, in any case, if we're in an era of abundance, how does scarce value happen in the first place? But I think that there's always an interest in provenance inside of culture. I could go down and buy you know, that Matisse painting on the bridge down at Lisbon today. But it's not the same as the Matisse, is it? So I think that those things will prevail. But yeah. So that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And, we see what, I guess, post scarcity, what happens in a post scarcity world within video games, right? Because video games are artificially scarce, and people, you mentioned yourself, it's 55% of in-game purchases within video games are cosmetic items, right? So it's like you literally do not need that item whatsoever, right? Like I don't need red hat in RuneScape or whatever, but like I want red hat because it's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like, I want Ferrari versus Kia. They're both taken from A to B, but Ferrari's way cooler, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very cool. All right. So what do you, when you look at like the 10-year vision of Youmio, what does that look and feel like?
I think the 10-year vision for Youmio is we want to build digital space that people are co-inhabiting, um, that they've got immense amount of control over. So huge amounts of creative control, the ability to curate and create amazing spaces for themselves and their friends, to be able to populate them with the most interesting types of characters, who kind of become more than just characters, but also their friends. So ones that have genuine emotional connection with. So we're cohabiting these virtual worlds, and we're building experiences in those virtual worlds, both for our human friends and for our agentic friends. Um, and, it's kind of a bridge as well between the digital world and the real world, because the things that we do there will also matter inside of the real world. So the folks who've got like interesting agents working on their behalf are kind of operating inside of the real world as well. Um, so I think that that's the future and where we're going. I'm very excited by the prospect of people being able to use their time efficiently, and what that's going to do. I hope that it's going to I think everyone's going to deal with it in those different ways, but I think that we're going to be a lot more open towards different types of cultural and life experiences, um, as a result of being able to outsource huge amounts of things to agents, and as a result of the democratization of um, execution, you know? Um, so hopefully people want to be inside of places like Youmio worlds because that makes them really happy, you know? Um, but likewise, they touch grass too.
That's awesome. Yeah. I have I am convinced that the world of entertainment, whether it be sports or video games or movies or books or whatever, is going to become way, way more popular after we have effective AI agents in the workplace. Because I'll be able to get 5x more done in my work, in my job, but I'll still have maybe 5 more hours of excess time that I didn't have before. I'm just kind of throwing out numbers. I don't actually know, but it just seems likely. And I do also think that there's going to be a good amount of people replaced by agents, right? And myself included, probably, right? But in that world, it kind of, this is a broader, deeper subject, because then it's like, okay, well, how do you get money if you don't have a job and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I'm hopeful that we'll figure out some sort of system. I don't know if it's UBI or whatnot, but I just do think that entertainment is going to become even more impactful than it already is. So I think you guys are extremely well positioned for that.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that people will look for things to entertain themselves with. I think as well, I speculate that people will have authenticity will become an incredibly important aspect in a world full of copyable material. What does it mean to be authentic in that sense, right? Like, without going overly kind of philosophical here, but like, it's hard to fully replicate the idea of being in a room with someone singing to you as they're playing a guitar, right? Like, we've got the best speakers in the world, but it's not the same, you know? And I think that more and more people are going to want that desire for authenticity, you know, which I think is going to be great, right? Because we've moved to this world of like everyone's flooded online into this kind of culture. I think we might actually see a little bit of pullback from digital culture and people will be like, you know what? You know, something that I can't replicate is the smell of the forest or, without being too overly kind of facetious here, but I do believe that there's going to be an opportunity for people to be able to focus in on the uncopyable.
It's funny you say that because I partly agree, but my heart agrees with you. My brain tells me that the digital experiences are going to get so much better, right? Like I don't know how we're not going to be living in the metaverse, all jacked into the matrix 24/7 within like 10 years, right? It's just like, I'm like, and there was a scientist recently, he put out a paper, how he just was able to decipher scent. He was able to make scent into code and then transport that code to like an email. And of course, like I think that there's additional steps you need, like machines to actually produce a scent, but like he's now turned scent into code, right? Like, so I'm like, man, virtual reality. I'm in Youmio. I'm with my friend who's an agent. Like, I'm smelling the forest. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, man, I just think it's going to get even better. See, that's just, I think, I was thinking out today. I'm like, I'm spending so much time on my phone and my computer today, even though I agree with you. Like, man, like I should probably get outside more, touch grass, but I don't because I'm like, well, or be on TikTok. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no. I think what you're saying is inevitable, but that feels like a distant future to me. Do you know what I mean? It feels like a distant future. You know, I spent a lot of time in working on things in VR and stuff like that. Rate of pace there, it's not as fast as it's not fast as AI, for example. Whereas if you wake up every day and it's like, bang, something has totally massively changed. Um, but I think that you're probably right. I think that the chances are, if I was a gambling man, I'd say that you are right, that everything will be replicatable eventually.
Amazing. All right, Michael, it is time for the closing questions. All right. What is and I'm making this up on the spot because I normally ask it, but what's the price of Bitcoin? But that's kind of lame. When do we get ASI? What year do we get ASI? Artificial super intelligence.
I think we're probably going to have the first. I think. Well, listen, it's hard to say. I know that that OpenAI, Sam Altman have been saying that like next year we're going to have AGI, so we're going to have some. That's going to be a massive leap forward if that's the case. I think within 2 years we're going to have game-changing intelligence available to everyone. I think it's probably this year that we'll have game-changing intelligence available to everyone, but it's going to be easily available to everyone within 2 years, and that's the point that we'll have like full-scale societal, like let's call it evolution.
Yeah. Evolution, revolution. There's a lot of words you could use there. Totally. All right. So 2027, that's pretty, it's pretty soon.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Was be selective of the battleground. So it's easy when you work inside of a fast-paced industry to, like it's really common inside of crypto as well. Like you chase narratives, people chase narratives all the time. And that's kind of almost, not always, but it's almost like the antithesis of changing, of selecting your battleground. I think it's really important from a business perspective to apply your energies to the places which have the highest chances of success. You're not always going to get it right, but if you're able to get it right, most of the time you've got a great opportunity. So I think that's one. The other thing that myself and my co-founder always say is that the best idea always wins. So try to be able to detach from your ego and listen to everyone and try to figure out what the best thing to do is, whether it comes from like a 19-year-old in the QA department or it comes from, some advisor who, sold Blizzard or something, best idea always wins.
All right. What trend is currently totally overhyped and what trend is currently underhyped?
I think the underhyped one is the one that I'll focus in on. Is the stuff that I'm most excited about. Is I think that people are yet to fully see or understand what 3D agents are going to do. I think once it becomes clearer, I think it's going to create massive amounts of interest. I think we're only scratching the surface really of what agents can do at the moment. I think that the 3D aspect is going to blow people's minds. I really strongly believe that. Kind of overhyped. I mentioned this before, but I think that sometimes people lean into the framework aspect, AI framework things. I'm speaking specifically about AI. I don't know if that was related to the question, but people constantly kind of are really looking at the framework aspect. But I think that the likelihood is that frameworks will consolidate, and there won't be a huge amount of defensibility for frameworks. I think that, for example, like it could happen that 6 months from now, OpenAI or DeepMind just release a framework, so to speak, that consolidates all the frameworks, or that just does basically anything. So I think right now that would probably be something. Now, in the short term, it's super cool though. Short term, it's super cool, but I just have suspicions about how that's going to play itself out in the medium and long term.
All right. What is your proudest accomplishment and why?
I'd say probably starting a business, like I was so happy I was making my dream video game for Sega. I was in a really senior position. I was like exec level, being able to travel around the world, living in London. And it's like, it was great, and everyone a lot of people said like, why would you throw that away to speculate on these bizarre technologies that no one really likes in the first place? And myself and my buddy we were just like, this is what we got to do. So it's cool to be on that journey, I think. Yeah, maybe that and my cats.
All right, Michael, thank you, man. I appreciate this. This was stellar. If people want to find out more about Youmio, learn more about you, where should they go?
You can check out Youmio_AI on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Mike_Mr. Kite. Likewise, we're on Discord and Telegram and all that good stuff. If you want to learn more about Limbo, it's Limbo_AI. You can follow her journey and her adventure there. Yeah, I think that's about it, man. Yeah, nice one so much for having me on. Awesome questions, man. It's so nice to jump onto one of these things with someone who's already, like, you already know so much stuff about this, and you've been thinking about this. It's so much detail, really clearly for so many years. So it's really refreshing to get on and have a chat with someone like you about this.
Thank you. All right, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Awesome.